It's a couple of weeks before Christmas 2007. Nancy Boquicchio's 7-year-old daughter, Joey, is excited to be in an upcoming holiday play. Joey is playing a reindeer, and Nancy is planning to bring her to meet a friend later so they can rehearse the lines for the show. First, Nancy swings by Joey's school early to take her to a doctor's appointment. The second grader is being checked out for a heart murmur that her mom is worried about. But she's going to be fine, Nancy tells her sister in a phone call that afternoon. The doctor said there's nothing to worry about. So the single mom and her daughter head to the town center mall, just around the corner in the oceanside city of Boca Raton, Florida. Nancy has a little Christmas shopping to do. Security cameras capture the two entering the mall just after 2 this Wednesday afternoon. They record the mom and daughter strolling past several stores. And the cameras capture the two leaving, about an hour after they got there. It's 3:11. By 10 o'clock that night, the last shoppers file out of the mall, and the doors are locked up. But Nancy's black SUV is still out in the parking lot, down by the Sears. The engine is running, and the lights are on. A mall security guard takes notice of Nancy's SUV. He goes over to check it out. Nancy and Joey Boquicchio are in the back seat. They're bound with handcuffs and zip ties, and they've been shot in their heads. Execution style. From the Sun Sentinel and SouthFlorida.com, in association with Wondery, this is Felonious Florida, the podcast that leads you into the dark side of the Sunshine State. I'm Juan Ortega, and this is the story of the Boca Mall murders. Episode 5, The Kidnap Kit. The scene at the mall in Boca Raton was terrifying, but it turned out to be just the latest horror to happen there in the year 2007. There were more victims, and South Florida was on edge. The killings of Nancy and Joey were tragic, and the great lives that they had, with so much to look forward to, makes their murders even more heartbreaking. Nancy Boquicchio's story didn't start in Florida. She was a New Yorker, advancing her career through several jobs when she made the decision to move to South Florida in the mid-1990s. She was working on Wall Street by then, and her coworkers had just relocated to Boca, so she made the decision to head south. It was a big decision for a native New Yorker, especially one who isn't anywhere near retirement age. Nancy had grown up with her family in a neighborhood in the Bronx and was deeply tied there. As a kid, she was known for her shenanigans, pulling off jokes and getting herself into all sorts of mischief. Once, she walked on a road that was being paved. She was covered in tar. Her mom had to cut off her clothes and even some of her hair to get rid of it all. Nancy's older sister, Joanne Bruno, remembers all the hijinks. She recalls how her sister liked to pluck tulips from her grandparents' front lawn every spring, and how Nancy loved the brick outside wall of the family home. It was a perfect canvas to scribble on with chalk.
She wrote in every single brick. She stood on a little ladder, and she wrote it with chalk. She wrote in every single... she was always some kind of mischief.
At her Catholic school, Nancy kept the nuns busy. Around the 1st and 2nd grade, she'd never stay in her seat. And when the nuns started wearing shorter garments, Nancy couldn't resist teasing one of them.
She'd whistle with her fingers loud, and she whistled at the nun, and she said to her, "You've been hiding those great legs all these years." That's the way she was. My mother was always worried because you never knew what was coming out of her mouth. I was totally different. People would even say, "It's hard to believe you have the same dad," because we were so different. I was always so, quiet and afraid in school, and she didn't care where she was, or she'd just say what she did. She was amazing.
Growing up in New York also made Nancy tough. She was street smart, a fighter who stood her ground. One summer, she was driving through Brooklyn with her father. Nancy had her Gucci shoulder bag with her on the seat. At a red light, a thief dashed up and reached into the car, trying to grab the bag. Nancy didn't tolerate it, and chomped her teeth down on the thief's hand.
And she says to him, he tried to rip it off her neck with the chains. And she says to him, "Oh, no, you don't. I get up and go to work every day for this. And I didn't even finish paying for this yet. You're not getting it." And she bit his hand so hard that he told her she was crazy, and he cursed at her. And the light changed, and they ran away. Both of them were on my father's side and his side. He told her she was a crazy woman, and he ran away. And that's how she was. She didn't take anything. She was yelling and screaming at him.
The Boquicchio family was close, so when Nancy made a decision in 1995 to move to Boca Raton, her sister wouldn't let her go alone. Joanne and her husband, Stanley, packed up and moved to the Sunshine State too. They settled into a home just a few minutes from Nancy.
Whatever we did as a family. So we all came down, and That's how we ended up in Florida.
Nancy got married around the year 2000, but would separate from her husband, Philip Hauser, in 2003. They divorced 3 years later. But before they separated, they had their beautiful daughter, Joey, in 1999. Nancy always wanted a child. She was 39 when she became pregnant, and her age concerned doctors. Joey's due date had been Christmas Day, but Joey arrived a week early. To her family, baby Joey was a miracle.
My sister didn't care what the doctor said. She says, I'm going to have this baby. God sent me this special angel. And Joey was born on December 17th, and she was a Christmas angel. She was 9 pounds, 4 ounces, big little girl, beautiful.
Joey was named after Nancy's dad, Joseph. Her middle name was Noelle because she was supposed to be born around Christmas. She was an outgoing girl full of character and life. She said hi to everyone and ate foods not many kids would touch.
And that's the way she was. Every restaurant we went in, everybody knew Joey. You know, they'd say, oh, Joey's here, a dozen oysters. And she'd eat oysters right off the shell. I mean, she was a little girl.
She took dance and acting classes, and she also enrolled in golf camp. In December of 2007, Nancy bought golf clubs for Joey as a Christmas present. They came in a pink leather golf bag, and Nancy had to hide them from Joey to await delivery by Santa. The clubs were stashed in the back of the Chrysler SUV on that day in 2007, when Nancy and Joey were last seen at Boca's Town Center Mall. Boca Raton Police Captain Matthew Duggan is among the officers to get the call in the early morning hours. 2 bodies were found in a car in the parking lot of the mall. A woman and a young girl were shot in their heads. They were in the back seat, their hands, feet, and neck bound with duct tape, plastic zip ties, and handcuffs.
I responded out there as the captain of the detective bureau at the time, and we initiated our investigation. It was apparent to us that they had been what amounted to executed in the rear of the vehicle, single gunshot wounds to the head.
Nancy Boquicchio and her miracle baby Joey had been kidnapped, terrorized, and murdered. Joey was just 5 days from her 8th birthday. Duggan and his investigators begin to piece together the scene. They gather video surveillance footage from around the mall. In all scenes, they are alone. No followers. Even as the two leave near the exit by the Sears, there's no sign of trouble. But at 3:14 p.m., just minutes after they are seen leaving the mall, a call comes into 911 from Nancy's cell phone. The line immediately goes dead. The dispatcher follows procedure and calls back within a minute. But nobody answers. At 3:19, 5 minutes after the call to 911, an ATM close to the mall registers a withdrawal from Nancy's account. A camera by the cash machine captures her making the transaction.
She's seen taking the money out, and there appears to be people in the back seat of the car.
Minutes later, the car is back in the parking lot where it would be discovered later that night by the mall security guard. Whoever did this to Nancy and Joey had planned it out well. He carried all the tools he thought were necessary to pull off the horrific crime.
He came with what we would refer to as his kit. You know, he had all the stuff he needed. He was prepared for this.
Something else the murderer brought. Goggles. The kind that might be worn by a swimmer or diver. The inside of the goggles were lined with sponge-like padding to black them out. The kidnapper put them on Nancy so she couldn't see. But it appears Nancy, the tough girl from the Bronx, fought back. The goggles were tugged off and were hanging around her neck, and she may have broken off the flimsy handcuffs the kidnapper used to restrain her.
You know, and I hate to do it because it's so hard to put yourself in her spot. I mean, imagine being bound next to your 7-year-old child in a car, not being able to see, but you can hear what's going on. A natural assumption would be that Nancy broke the handcuffs. If you break your handcuffs, the first thing you're naturally going to do is you're going to reach up and pull, where am I, what's going on? You're going to pull the sunglasses or the goggles down.
Nancy's family also thinks the desperate mom fought back. Nancy's niece, Claudine Northridge.
If anything, she did whatever she had to do to protect Joey. Because we all knew what went through her mind. Like, is this guy going to not only maybe kill her, but is he going to sexually assault her? Or, these were things that she was always afraid of to begin with.
Yeah, that's what
She was always afraid to.
So I know that going through her mind, she was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to fight him off. And she obviously did, to break free of the restraints.
And that's what my sister did.
That's what I believe.
She fought to the last minute to save Joey. I know that. I know.
The killer had forced Nancy to withdraw $500. He shot them both, then disappeared. Stephen Abrams was the mayor of Boca Raton at the time.
Well, it was just so brazen. I mean, holiday season at Town Center Mall, of course, a large regional mall in our city, involving such defenseless victims. So, your hearts went out immediately to the victims and their families. And I think that's what captured the attention of our residents at the time.
Felonious Florida is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Hiring great people is a challenge. If you've tried, you know what I'm talking about. You post to a job site and then wait and hope that the right people see it. ZipRecruiter knew there was a smarter way, so they built a platform that finds the right job candidates for you. ZipRecruiter learns what you're looking for, identifies people with the right experience, and invites them to apply for your job. These invitations have revolutionized how you find your next job hire. In fact, 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. And ZipRecruiter even spotlights the strongest candidates, so you never miss a great match. Businesses of all sizes trust ZipRecruiter for their hiring needs. And right now, our listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Florida. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Florida. The right candidates are out there. ZipRecruiter is how you find them. ZipRecruiter.com/Florida. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. On the morning the bodies of Nancy and Joey Boquicchio are discovered, Joanne Bruno is frantic. She had been trying to reach her sister Nancy all night, but couldn't get an answer. The two talk on the phone every night and every morning while Nancy's dropping Joey off at school. Something is wrong, and as Joanne watches the morning news, a wave of dread washes over her.
Something kept telling me, and then on the news, my daughters and I were talking about someone being murdered at the mall, but they said 2 women. So I never put it together. And then about 10:30, I saw the news, and I saw an SUV, and all of a sudden my heart stopped. I just knew, even though they were saying 2 women, and they couldn't give any names because they hadn't notified the family yet.
Joanne and other family members are called to the Boca Raton police station and told of the tragic deaths of Nancy and Joey. Nancy's niece, Claudine, is one of the last to arrive at the station. Her mom, Joanne, breaks the news to her.
Just said, I can't believe this. And I can remember, they were crying. And I looked at there was 3 policemen standing in the office. I'm like, is this true? I had to, get confirmation from them. And that's how I ended up finding out.
In the days after the killings, some shoppers still head to the mall to buy presents at the height of the holiday season.
It didn't surprise many shoppers to see the mall parking lot packed Saturday, some even using the grass for extra spaces. They say that's because now, just 2 days after the horrific murders of Nancy Boquicchio and her daughter Joey, security is everywhere. Every few minutes you can see either a guard in an SUV drive by or a Boca Raton police officer. Golf carts even bring people from the back of the lots to the front doors.
The news reporter from local station CBS 12 talked to shoppers who were worried for their safety and the possibility of a killer still on the loose.
Absolutely. And to tell you the truth, that's why I'm here. I wouldn't let my wife go alone with the baby.
It's kind of afraid to kind of walk around here in the parking lot. You never know what's going to happen, especially being alone.
A week after the killings, the community holds a day-long wake for Nancy and Joey at a funeral home in West Boca Raton. Nancy's ex-husband, Philip Hauser, attends the wake. He tells the news media at the time that he had been seriously talking with Nancy about getting back together. Joey even kept the last name of her father, going by Boquicchio Hauser.
They had gotten divorced. Unfortunately, he's a very nice person. Then had moved back up to New York. So basically, yeah, she was pretty much a single mom. Joey was about 4 years old when he went back up to New York.
The police wanted to blame him.
Yeah, I feel bad for him because actually,
Yeah.
Police question the family but conclude that none of them, including Joey's father, is likely tied to the killings.
So many people tried to blame him, and I immediately told the police, no, it wasn't Phil.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil is the kind of a person he wouldn't hurt a fly.
no.
He
He would help a
And
bum
he
on the
adored
street.
Joey.
The kidnapping and killings are horrific on their own. But it's worse. As police piece together Nancy and Joey's ordeal, they quickly realize the details of what happened that afternoon are chillingly familiar. This has happened before. To another mother and child, at the same mall, just a few months earlier. Nancy and Joey likely aren't the only victims of this kidnapper. It's August 7th, a Tuesday. A woman has been shopping for a couple of hours with her 2-year-old son at the Boca Mall, where Nancy and Joey would be murdered 4 months from now. About 5 p.m., the two leave the mall and climb into their SUV, a black Lincoln Navigator. She places her son in his car seat in the back. She puts some shopping bags away, and then her son's stroller. She walks around the SUV to get behind the wheel and hears her son cry. She looks in the back seat. There's a man sitting there, sitting next to her son. He must have snuck in while she was putting away the bags and stroller. He's wearing a floppy hat and sunglasses. And he has a gun.
She put her son in the car, she went to get in the car, and she immediately looks back, and there's a man with a handgun in the car, pointing at her son. They drive around a little bit. They do go to an ATM, much like in the Bokikio case.
She pleads with the man. Take whatever you want, just don't hurt us. He tells her to drive, calmly giving her directions. First to an ATM, then to a stop, where he can bind and tighten her restraints. In interviews later, she says that she's taken to a bank where she withdraws $600, $200 at a time. He makes her flip up the rearview mirror, preventing her from looking back at him. But he does let her turn around every now and then so she can reassure her son with words or a pat on the leg. Those brief glances in the back seat let her get quick looks at her kidnapper. The woman is terrified. She believes she may be killed, and she considers ways to escape. She could crash the SUV, she thinks, or maybe mouth a plea for help to the camera in the ATM. But the man has a gun, so she cooperates. They reach the parking lot of a hotel and restaurant west of Boca Raton, about 3 miles from the mall where the woman and her son had been shopping. He makes her move to the back seat and binds her with handcuffs and zip ties. He uses more zip ties to secure her neck to the headrest. Then, just like the man who killed Nancy and Joey Bokikio, the kidnapper takes out swimming goggles. They were blacked out to prevent her from seeing.
It may have looked a little strange if a car pulled up and looked over and saw a lady in the back seat wearing swimming goggles.
So he didn't put the goggles on her right away. Instead, he forces the woman to wear blacked out sunglasses. And unlike the swimming goggles, she can see out the sides of them and track where they go. The man drives the SUV on Florida's turnpike for several miles. They stop at a shopping center near Delray Beach, Florida, then return to the Boca Mall where the ordeal began. It's been more than an hour. The sunglasses the woman had been wearing are replaced by the blacked out goggles.
The way he did the swimming goggles, ultimately, she just couldn't see out of them because they're so tight on your eyes and they're completely blacked out.
Then the man's demeanor changes. In fact, he becomes almost courteous. He asks the woman if she's okay. He offers her water. He checks if her little boy is okay. The woman's cell phone starts to ring, and it keeps ringing. The kidnapper seems to get annoyed, so he redials one of the last numbers. He holds the phone up to the woman and instructs her on what to say. It's her boyfriend, the father of her child. She speaks into the phone. Come get me. I'm at the mall and my car broke down. Then the kidnapper exits the car and vanishes. It's 6:30 p.m. when police get the call from a valet stand at the mall. The woman is worried the man will come after her and her son. He took her driver's license, and he threatened to find her if he sees himself on the news. To protect her identity, the woman's name has never been released by police. She's always been referred to as Jane Doe. She has hidden her identity from the public and has only talked to reporters on the condition that her name isn't used. I spoke to her recently about the 2007 ordeal. She declined to be recorded for this podcast, but she told me, to this day, she still worries the kidnapper is still out there. Her son is a handsome boy of about 12. He has no memory of that terrifying day.
Hey, it's Suzanne here from the Felonious Florida team. I just got my first order from Blue Apron, the meal delivery service. And I want to tell you how impressive and delicious Blue Apron is. We all get busy, but we all want to cook yummy and healthy meals, and Blue Apron hit the mark. Each ingredient was meticulously measured out and came with easy instructions. They even have pictures for us not-so-great cooks. We had Parisian steak and roasted vegetables on Saturday, and black bean and vegetable enchiladas on Sunday. Both meals were easy to prepare and extremely tasty. The ingredients were super fresh. Here's something cool. For 6 weeks, from April 16th through May 21st, Blue Apron is teaming up with Airbnb to bring you the best home cooking from around the world. Each week, our menu will feature a recipe developed in collaboration with an Airbnb Experiences host like Cece, who's a chef from Shanghai who makes incredible Kung Pao chicken. This is a great time to check out Blue Apron. And here's why. As a listener of this show, you get your first 3 meals for free just by going to blueapron.com/Florida. So check out this week's menu at blueapron.com/Florida. You will not be disappointed. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
After the slayings of Nancy and Joey Bochicchio, a full-on manhunt is underway to find their killer. Dozens of detectives and officers from the Boca Raton Police Department work alongside a long list of agencies: local sheriff's offices, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FBI.
The FBI joined the investigation because carjacking is a federal crime. Also, local investigators were hoping some of their tools could aid in the investigation.
They were looking for anything that could help them break the case. Then they get a lead. Some of Nancy Bochicchio's belongings had been taken by the killer. They resurfaced about 50 miles south in Miami. It was her cell phone and a credit card. A man who found her cell phone had been apparently answering it that day after the killings. And it leads to a chilling call. Nancy's brother-in-law, Stanley Bruno, remembers. He had been summoned to the police station before he was told of Nancy's murder. He tried calling Nancy's cell phone, but she didn't answer. A man he didn't recognize did.
This guy answers the phone. I said, "Who are you?" And he wouldn't say who he was. And he says, he hung up. I called back again. Okay. He says, "You got to stop calling." Blah blah blah. So I said, "Okay." And I got to the police department. And I told them, "Listen, they have this man answering my sister-in-law's phone, and I don't know who it is." Blah blah blah.
Police chase the leads in Miami. They interview the people who had the credit card and cell phone. They circulate flyers in the area where they were found. It's about 5 minutes from where the American Airlines Arena stands today, the home of the Miami Heat basketball team.
We're confident those individuals were not involved in the homicides. Their stories made sense, and they were inconsistent with the descriptions of the suspects. So I hate to say it was a dead end, but the recovery of the credit cards and the cell phone really didn't lead any investigative value.
Police suspect the kidnapper had disposed of the items in Miami, possibly as a way of throwing investigators off his trail. But nobody matches the description of the kidnapper. The potential lead goes nowhere. Meanwhile, police wrestle with another scary possibility. There may be a third related case. A woman had been robbed a few days after the August kidnapping, the Jane Doe ordeal where the victim survived. It happened at Meisner Park, not far from the Boca Mall. It's an upscale spot with shops and restaurants. It's common to see Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and Bugattis pulling up to the valet stand. A little after midnight, a 19-year-old woman is approached by a robber as she walks into the parking garage. He holds her at gunpoint and demands she go with him to an ATM to withdraw money. She refuses, instead offering him the $200 in cash he has on her while she goes by herself to an ATM. She escapes and finds a group of friends. When they return, the man is gone. The description of the robber she gives to police resembles the one that Jane Doe gave after she and her 2-year-old son had been kidnapped a few days earlier.
The description Jane Doe gave us was an 18 to 25-year-old male, about 5'11", 180 pounds, clean-shaven, with a brown ponytail, and a floppy hat, they often call boonie caps, kind of a military-looking hat, sunglasses, and driving gloves. She was specific on the driving gloves that they had no back to them.
The woman robbed at Meisner Park gave a similar description of her assailant.
She's approached by a guy that she describes as 18 to 25, 5'10" to 6 foot, 170 pounds, clean-shaven, with long dark hair, a floppy hat, sunglasses, and driving gloves.
The descriptions of the suspects and the proximity of the crimes pique the interest of investigators, but there's also inconsistencies.
If you look at all 3 cases together, Jane Doe, the Meisner Park case, and then the Bochicchio homicide, there's a lot of inconsistencies. Jane Doe, suspect, is very organized, very prepared, very methodical in what he does. A few days later, he's back at Meisner Park. If in fact it's the same individual, completely different. There's no preparation. He doesn't seem as planned. In the Jane Doe case, there's a mom. The child is arguably relevant in as much as it's a control mechanism for the suspect, meaning he has control over the victim in as much as the victim is as concerned about the child as she is about herself.
Investigators aren't certain the Meisner Park robbery is connected to the others, but they are convinced the 2 kidnappings, those of Nancy and Joey Bochicchio, and of Jane Doe and her 2-year-old son, were done by the same person. Police set out looking for a motive. Were the August kidnapping and December murders done just for money? In both cases, the suspect got away with just a few $100s.
The effort and the preparation and the planning to perpetuate this crime is inconsistent with the financial gains. I mean, he was getting $500 from these robberies. You know, it's a lot of work to put in for $500 financial gain. There's almost certainly some other motive or rationale for why he did these things, more on a psychological level than a financial level.
And why were Nancy and Joey Bochicchio killed and the August victims spared? Maybe it's because Nancy fought back, working her hands free and yanking off the dark goggles.
Candidly, until we sit down with the bad guy, we may never answer that question.
The fact is, despite investigating for 10 years and following more than 2,000 leads, there have been few answers. Police released a sketch of the kidnapper based on the description provided by the victim in the August kidnapping. A young man who looked like a sketch of the suspect was arrested months later at a mall in Miami-Dade County. He was released when the victim didn't pick him out of a police lineup. Police released pieces of evidence, hoping they might jog loose a new lead. They showed surveillance videos, including of Nancy and Joey arriving and leaving the Boca Mall. In an unusual move for an active investigation, the police publicized a photo of the blacked out goggles. They wanted tips on where they might have come from. That led them to an overseas importer, but that's about all. In 2015, Boca Raton police held a news conference with the FBI and announced that they believe the killer has links to Miami-Dade County, where Nancy Bochicchio's stolen items were found. They say the duct tape and zip ties used in the kidnappings were bought from a major retailer there. In an interview for this podcast, police said that retailer was the Home Depot. Police have posted rewards for information. First $350,000, then $400,000 when the FBI pitched in more money in 2015. That reward still stands today. And last November, police released an 8-minute video aimed at bringing the case back into the public eye. They hope somebody saw something at the Town Center Mall. FBI agent John McVeigh fears there may be other victims who are too afraid of coming forward.
So if you are somebody that, this happened to, you never reported it, come forward now. I mean, we'll do what we can to protect your identity and stuff. But, if you have a piece of evidence or you have something that you remember about the person, it may link us to this suspect.
The slayings of Nancy and Joey Bochicchio shocked the community and drew national attention. The show America's Most Wanted profiled it several times through the years. Angeline Hartman was a producer and correspondent for the show before it went off the air. She says the idea of an attacker targeting a mom and child is horrific enough. But the moment he chose left Nancy and Joey particularly vulnerable. It's something any parent can relate to.
I think this is really tough for any parent across America. All mothers can relate to that moment when you take the extra time to put your child in the back seat of a car, to strap your child in, to make sure your child is safe. And those are vulnerable moments because you are taking time to focus on your child. And so when this story happened, and a lot of us at America's Most Wanted are parents, a lot of us are mothers, we talked in particular about how vicious this person was to strike at that moment when a mother was most vulnerable. And it just, even now, 10 years later, it just really impacts me to even think about what happened to Nancy Bochicchio at that time and the fear that she must have been going through in trying to protect Joey. And there's the woman who is, there's the woman who wants to remain anonymous. Her child was 2 years old at that time. And I can just imagine what it looked like for her. And thank goodness that she survived that and is able to talk about it. But even now, it makes me emotional to think about somebody targeting mothers out there.
At the Boca Raton police station, a picture of Nancy and Joey hangs on the wall in Captain Matthew Duggan's office so he can see it every day. And he talks with Nancy's sister, Joanne, every few weeks. She asks if he thinks they'll solve the murders.
She asked me that question. She's asked me that question 100 times. My answer is the same today as it was on December 12th. Yeah, I believe we'll solve it. But I have to believe we'll solve it. If one day goes by where I, or any of the people working for our agency, allow ourselves not to believe it's going to be solved, it won't be solved. You have to get up every morning. You have to say, we're going to solve this thing.
But the mysteries of the kidnappings and murders at the Boca Raton Mall that year would only grow. On the next episode of Felonious Florida, investigators take a closer look at the murder of another woman earlier that same year. Like the others, she was shopping at Boca's Town Center Mall, and like the others, she was kidnapped and terrorized. And the community wonders, is there a serial killer on the loose in Florida? That's next week. The authorities ask anyone with information about the mall murders case to call Boca Raton Police at 561-338-1344 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-458-8477. Thanks for listening to this episode of Felonious Florida. If you're enjoying this podcast, please rate us on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends about our show. It's available online at feloniousflorida.com, Apple Podcasts, Wondery.com, or your favorite podcast platform. You can see photographs, video, and read more about this case online at feloniousflorida.com. And be sure to like us on Facebook. Felonious Florida is produced by David Schutz, Lisa Arthur, and me, Juan Ortega. I also wrote and reported the Boca Mall murders case. Editing by David Schutz and Randy Roguski. Sound engineering and production by Cindy Choi, Sean Pitts, Carlene Jean, and Randy Vasquez. The Felonious Florida team includes Danny Sanchez, Dana Banker, Yiran Zhu, and David Seelig. Hi, I'm Juan Ortega. If you'd like to support more journalism like this, you can help by joining the Sun Sentinel, South Florida's leading source for news, information, and entertainment. Visit sunsentinel.com/join.